personal, you definitely can. It should be live on Wolf Web 3 now. I'm going to make sure for my personal that we're live. Sometimes I'll start and thinking we're live and we're not live. I'm like, oh, crap. So let's see. Perfect. I see it. All right. Let's go. Okay. All right, everyone, welcome to Wolf Web 3. Welcome to the podcast. We've been doing a lot more podcasts lately, and I've been learning a ton. I love these sit-down conversations. We've got an awesome guest today. You're the CMO, Marc from Algorand Foundation, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what's going on there, what kind of things he's up to, what kind of things the foundation is up to, what the role is. I really didn't even know about foundations until 2024. I was years into it before I realized there are foundations and there are people who work in this manner, I guess, in the crypto world. And so I figured, well, if it was the first time for me and I've been in the game for a minute, A, that's probably sad, but B, there's probably other people who want to find out about some of these things. So really excited to get into it. Make sure to repost the stream if you're listening. And Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive too deep into yourself, just for the basis of context of the conversation, what is like the role / goals of Algorand Foundation? What is the main responsibilities there?
Yeah, so very simply said, the role of the foundation is to support and grow the ecosystem of projects that are developing on Algorand. And if you want to unpack it a little bit, there's a number of different components into this. One has to do with the developer ecosystem and the developer tools in a developer environment. We want to make sure we create the best possible tools for developers to develop onto Algorand. So for instance, we launched this year native Python. So, a regular Python developer doesn't have to learn a new language. They can just use existing Python and develop on Algorand. So that's one of the components of what we do, is creating the best possible developer experience. The second thing related to that is like setting the technical standards. And so we're hoping to drive kind of the industry forward with like new innovative standards to drive kind of more mainstream usage of blockchains. And a good example of that, for instance, is a standard that we just recently proposed around liquid auth, which is the idea of a new mechanism based on open standards for connecting dApps and wallets, and also bridge over to Web 2 world. So the world of standards, and how do we create standards that make it easier for people to use crypto and blockchains, is a second kind of big component of what we do. The third one I would say is the general support of entrepreneurs and builders. So we have a very good DevRel team that is basically helping projects and helping entrepreneurs and helping startups and helping builders kind of get their projects live. And then I think the last point is governance, right? Like all of the on-chain governance that we do, we manage that program, and we manage that voting program. So those are kind of the four components of what the foundation does. But the whole overall objective is to support and help the growth of the overall ecosystem.
Perfect. Okay, that was super, super helpful. And then for yourself, with the CMO role, just so you can clear that up for people, what that entails. People see CMO, they instantly think marketing. What does the role exactly entail? Are you in charge of a bunch of people? Like, what's your main day-to-day stuff look like?
Yeah, so I mean, if you see like traditionally, whether it's blockchain or not, like you could see that the role of a CMO over the course of the years has changed. And so gradually the CMO is more of a person that is focused on growth. And I would say the same thing is true here. Yes, CMO is the head of marketing, but ultimately it's mainly about driving growth. And the way I look at my role is, how can I help drive overall growth of the ecosystem? And doing so by kind of raising awareness for Algorand and what Algorand is about, talking about all the differentiators of why Algorand is different from all of the other chains that are out there, and then actually driving adoption by developers, by builders and entrepreneurs, by users, by enterprise customers, so we can actually drive the growth of the overall ecosystem. And that's how I look at this, and that's what I think is the most important component of what the role is.
Do you find it's the same like across? You mentioned it's changed a little bit, the role over the last few years. Do you notice when you meet with other CMOs, like are there points of contact where you guys can connect on the same kind of thing, or is it generally the same across the board, you think, or no?
Oh yeah, I think this role is, like, many companies actually don't have a CMO anymore. They call it the Chief Growth Officer, right?
Okay.
Instead of a Chief Marketing Officer. So that trend that you see about kind of driving growth is really what becomes the core strategic premise of like what the CMO is tasked with doing. and tasked with helping to achieve. And so yes, you see this
Got it.
everywhere. You see this across different industries as well. That's where that role is evolving towards.
Gotcha. What was your prior to Algorand Foundation? Well, I'm not sure maybe which side you want to go down first. Maybe either how did you find Algorand Foundation? How'd you find yourself in this role? And then B, like, what were you doing before? So maybe those kind of tied together.
Yeah. So there's two experiences before I joined Algorand that I think are relevant to what I do now. One is my experience working at Google. So I worked at Google for slightly more than 10 years, and I was the CMO of Android. And I joined the Android team, the Google team, roughly a year before the first Android phone came to market. And that was a very interesting experience because, like a blockchain, like Android is kind of an operating system in a way. And so there's no like direct to consumer, like really approach. You're not going to like sell Android to consumer because Android is just an operating system that sits in the phone. And so the challenge was, how do we basically get adoption for Android as a new operating system that was not known and that nobody knew about? And so that's really what I did for about 10 years at Google. And a lot of it had to do with like really building that ecosystem of developers, but also fostering this very strong community of Android fans and helping them and getting them excited and keeping them excited and be part of that community. And growing that was a core part of what the CMO's role was in that regard. So that was one experience that I think is highly relevant to what I do now. And then the second one, after I left Google, I joined a SaaS company, a software as a service company called Medallia, which is in the enterprise software space focused on customer experience. And that was a very different kind of marketing experience because as opposed to B2C, it was more, and developer, it was more kind of B2B and enterprise focused. And so, and this again, I think is quite relevant to what we do because a lot of the use cases in blockchain are also enterprise driven. If you think about like verticals like data integrity or sustainability, identity, and all of these things, payments, right? So a lot of these things you deal with like big enterprise actors, and how do you present yourself in front of these enterprise actors and make sure they look at you as the blockchain they should place a bet on? So that's B2B, and that's kind of B2B marketing. And so those are kind of the two experiences that I've had that are, I think, most relevant to the job I'm doing now, both the B2C developer experience and then the B2B more kind of enterprise related experience.
And then was it through like a mutual connection or something that got you into the blockchain world? Because were you like somewhat aware of it then, being in that world?
Yeah, so I've been very interested in blockchain actually for a while. I started kind of investigating the space, like it was 2016, 17, something like that. And I went to the first like blockchain week conference in San Francisco, which was in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And to me, I was fascinated by it, and especially because blockchain, as an intellectual curiosity, right? Because it lives, in this completely different world, and it's kind of the intersection, between very different disciplines, like whether it's like software and economics and cryptography, and so it's this very interesting kind of animal. And so that really was what piqued my interest, and I've been kind of following the space very closely since then, and made some investments here and there. Did partnered with a venture fund, and so, but I never had actually an active role. And then so when this opportunity came around with Algorand, I mean, it was my ideal job, and I jumped on it, and absolutely love it. So it's been great.
What do you think is the win condition of Algorand in particular that draws you in a little bit? Something unique about it?
Well, so I think that Algorand, if you're a developer and you want to develop an app that needs to have real world scale, I think Algorand is by far the best blockchain to do this on. And there's three reasons for that. One is the one that I already mentioned, which is we offer a native Python implementation. So you as a developer don't have to worry about learning a new language, learning new tools. It's all there. Everything that you're familiar with is there. Python is one thing. Coming very soon is TypeScript, and that's a whole other kind of world of developers that now will have access to an easy on-ramp if you want to blockchain. But the second reason, and it's talked about less, but I think it's equally, if not more important, is that the developer ROI on Algorand is 6 times as high as on Ethereum or any other chain. And the reason is because Algorand has so much stuff and functionality built in compared to Ethereum, for instance, that as a developer, you can rely on this built-in functionality as opposed to having to build everything from scratch. And let me give you examples. If you want to create a token, right, on Ethereum, you have to create a smart contract to create a token. Like on Algorand, you don't. Like it's built into the system. You can create a smart contract without, you create a token without creating a smart contract. Another example, atomic swaps, right? Atomic swaps are a built-in functionality in Algorand. They're not on Ethereum. Multi-sig signatures, again, not built into Algorand, not built into your guys. The fact that we have instant finality is a huge deal, right? If you're developing an app for real-world scale, the fact that there's no instant finality and your transaction can be like pending for like seconds or even a minute or longer, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal because now you have to write very complicated software to try and deal with the situation and make sure nothing goes wrong in this intermediary phase. So it adds incredible complexity to your software, something you don't have to do with Algorand. So the developer ROI is way, way, way high. And we have projects that actually came over from Ethereum, and one of the key reasons, settlement is one of them, they said is because they are 6 times more productive in developing on Algorand than they are on Ethereum. And that's a big deal, right? If you're a developer, you can now focus your time and your energy in creating the best possible user experience, the best possible solution to certain use cases, as opposed to having to focus your time on basic integration with a blockchain. So that's kind of the second element. And then of course the third element is reliability, scale, and low cost. Like we've been around for 5 years, never been down. Scalability, we can scale up to 10,000 transactions per second. And low cost, I mean the transaction cost is 0.001 algo, so which is like 1/10,000th of a cent or so, or 1,000th of a cent, like very, very small transaction fees, basically. And so those, I think, so again, if you're a developer and you're thinking about developing an application, a serious application for real world scale, those are the 3 things you're interested in, right? Languages you understand, very high ROI because a lot of the functionality is built in. And then thirdly, you have reliability, scalability, and low cost. So everything is there for you. And so that, I think, is really the win condition for Algorand. That's what can make developers very successful.
Yeah. When you're speaking with like institutions and big companies and like these boardrooms, are those the things that they gravitate towards? Is it those things? Or what have you found to be like some of the more convincing arguments, I guess, or win factors when talking to people or investors or people like that?
Oh no, those are the critical things. Those are the critical things. And because again, if you're in a situation, specifically in the payment space, you don't want a certain period of time, even if it's seconds or even if it's a minute, you don't want that period of uncertainty where you don't know who owns what. And that's essential, right? That's the basis of kind of ownership in an economy. You need to know where the money is and who owns it. Like if you don't, it's a very, very serious issue. And the second thing, which we didn't talk about, is really quantum security. Like we're the only blockchain whose ledger is quantum secure. And so that, if you think about institutions, specifically financial institutions, that's a really important point. There may not be quantum computers today, but if there's a quantum computer, let's say in a year from now, we are already ready because our ledger is already secure against potential quantum attacks that may come later. And so that's really
what does that even mean? Like, or I guess I know what it means, but I guess could you elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, it means basically that the cryptography that we use, we basically changed the cryptography that we use in terms of securing the ledger using a system of state proofs. And these state proofs use Falcon keys, and those Falcon keys are basically post-quantum keys. So these keys cannot be broken even by future quantum computers. And that what makes the entire ledger quantum secure.
Okay, that makes sense. I was actually writing a note down. I was like, that's really interesting. I have to come back to that. I haven't really heard that point brought up, so that's super interesting. I'm curious on like sort of we dove a little bit into some of the the things that Algorand brings to the table, I guess, that are unique or really important that people maybe aren't thinking about as much, especially like the average crypto user. They're probably not thinking as deeply in those arenas. They're more looking at total volume or transactions and things. So I'm curious on like this is more of like a personal question, I guess, of like your personal take on the crypto world and where you see the most benefits and optimization that blockchain provides. I guess I'm kind of curious on where your brain comes at when I throw that at you.
I mean, that's a very broad question, and I
It is
think
a broad question.
yeah. And so I think there's so many areas. Like it's two answers to the question. One answer is like I'm not like a blockchain maxi that says like any company in the world for any reason they basically have to switch everything to blockchain because that's a superior technology for everything. I'm not in that camp. I think there's use cases for blockchain where blockchain is really really good, and there's use cases where blockchain is maybe not that good and is maybe not the best solution. And so what are the use cases to me where blockchain is a great solution? I think there's a number of them. One, of course, is the world of payments, right? Obviously, like if you think about the cost of like cross-border payments, the cost of existing financial rails that exist today, it is obvious that blockchain offers a much more superior solution to this. And it's not just cost, it's also the speed and settlement. Like blockchain offers instant settlement. Like in traditional finance, that doesn't happen, instant settlement. Like it takes a day, 2 days, whatever. And so that whole area obviously is a huge area where blockchains will have a very, very significant impact. Supply chains is another one. If you think about one of the key characteristics of blockchains, of course, is the mutability and the transparency. Those are things that you really need in supply chains, because supply chains typically requires coordination across many different companies, and requires trust across the entire chain, and requires visibility, transparency about what's happening and the data that's being sent around. And so that's blockchain is a perfect solution to be able to do that kind of stuff. And so anything that has to do with supply chains, I think, is another really big area where we see a lot of activity. And I would say that the third one is anything that has to do with data integrity, right? Data integrity, again, is a huge potential area. And especially now with what's happening with AI, where you can't really trust data anymore because you don't know if data has been manipulated or not. I think blockchain can really add a lot of value in terms of guaranteeing that the data that you see, the information that you see, is accurate and has not been tampered with. And so that, I think, is a third area that I think has tremendous amount of promise, I would say.
Yeah. You brought up a bunch of great points there. I'm curious on something, maybe that some things you've learned since your time here, working in this role. Certainly for me, being in more conversations on the professional side and career side of the crypto world, there's a bunch of things I picked up and learned, I guess, like transferable skills and things like this, but also just general knowledge, like hosting a Bitcoin space, Bitcoin type of spaces or Bitcoin mining spaces over the last 9 months or so has definitely impacted me a little bit and orange-pilled me a little bit. And so I've learned a ton just being in these spaces as well as meetings and stuff. But what are some things that you've taken away from your experience here, either from the crypto knowledge world / crypto world, or just like in a more professional or even personal sense?
Okay, I'll answer both. I'll answer like, okay, what did I learn, like in terms of like crypto in general, and then specifically for me personal, taking this role. And so on the first part, it's interesting. Like I've always been incredibly bullish about kind of blockchain and blockchain technology. As I said, I've been following the space, for a number of years. But I always thought that major mainstream impact was always like 1 to 2 years in the future, and it was like never quite there, and it was like never, and so joining and now being kind of embedded in it, like that was my kind of ongoing assumption. But actually, when you look at, and many people don't know this because the Algorand project is not that well known, but many of the projects are actually achieving real world scale today and having major impact today, and people don't know about them, but they do. And so, and that was very surprising to me and very encouraging to me. Like, I give you a couple of examples. That we have this company, HissaPay, And I'm not sure if you heard of it, but Hesapay is a company that works in Afghanistan. Is basically offering payment services to and is helping citizens in Afghanistan, and has a partnership with United Nations and other big donors to provide cash assistance to people in need who need it. They have over 100,000 active users. 100,000 active users that are basically receiving cash assistance that they can then use to buy bread or buy the essentials that they need. This is not pilot anymore. This is scaling, and scaling in a massive way. And they're using blockchain to do it, right? And it's interesting because we always think about blockchain like, okay, well, in the US you talk about banks and like, okay, we have a pretty sophisticated banking system, so why do we need blockchain? We do have banks; they kind of function, right? But in a country like Afghanistan, you don't have banks. Like 6% of the population of Afghanistan is banked, right? Means 94% don't have a bank account, right? And so blockchain is actually now the technology that is being used to offer banking services to the population of Afghanistan. So they kind of skip over the legacy banking because they don't have it, and they go straight to blockchain. And I think that's very interesting, and it's happening at scale today. And that to me was fascinating. The second example I want to give is, like, for instance, a company called TravelX. I'm not sure if you heard of them. So TravelX is minting NFTs, but the NFTs are airline tickets. So in effect, what they're doing is they're creating a secondhand market for airline tickets. So imagine you buy an airline ticket from an airline, and at any point in time, you can say, well, I'm going to sell that airline ticket. Like, I don't want any more. Something's come up. And then you can basically sell that airline ticket on a secondary market in the way you could sell a concert ticket. And so they create this entirely new market of like secondhand airline tickets, which is a huge benefit to consumers. I mean, we all know how frustrating it is if you buy a ticket from an airline and you get stuck with your ticket. And if you want to change it, you pay fees. If you cancel it, you pay fees. Like, there's fees left and right. In this case, there's no fees. You can just sell your ticket, and in the way you sell an airline ticket, and in the way you sell a concert ticket. From an airline perspective, it's also very interesting because the airline can actually get their money way sooner because people don't have to wait to buy a ticket. They can take advantage of a cheap price, and they can buy it 6 months in advance or a year in advance. So the airline gets their money much sooner, and they can do much better seat planning and advanced cash planning that way. So both parties benefit. And so they've basically minted millions and millions of airlines tickets already. So again, something that's operating at scale today. And so I can go and I can give you many kinds, like supply chain. There's so many companies we have that are operating in the supply chain, like Finboot, who's working with like the biggest gas and oil companies to make their supply chains more sustainable. And I can go on and on and on. So there's like so many projects that are really operating at real world scale today. And so people don't know enough about them. And of course, it pains my heart as a marketing person that people don't know about these projects. So I'm committed to changing that and actually making sure that people realize what blockchains do in the real world today and what impact they're having today. And I think that's very exciting. So it's a bit long-winded question on the first part. What did I learn in blockchain in general?
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing.
And maybe the second part is, what did I learn personally? And to me, this is the first job I've had, honestly, where I'm kind of playing a much more kind of public role in the sense of like being more present in the community, participating in podcasts and in X Spaces and stuff like that, and tweeting very actively. And for me personally, that's very new. Like I'd never done that. I've never done that before, and so that was a big learning for me, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, I must say. It's a lot of fun to be kind of engaging with the community and have this direct feedback mechanism that
and you've got that profile picture. I thought it was pretty fun. I wasn't expecting that, and I was like, okay, all right, this guy rocking out the PFP, I like it.
So it's that was very new for me, I must say, and I love it.
That's awesome. That is super cool. And you brought up some great points there, especially with supply chain. There's a bunch of, I guess, aspects of blockchain that are being utilized in a way that just are not being talked about. Like you wouldn't know unless someone brought it up to you. That's why these spaces are fun. The podcasts are fun because you get to ask people who are in these scenarios or in these conversations with people who are actively doing things. I brought this up, I think, yesterday in a conversation, but for every announcement that we see across our headlines on whatever newsletter or email we get is some whole team putting in all this work for this one moment, and then it just gets plastered as a headline. And honestly, we scroll past 90% of them, and 90% of the good ones that are making a real impact in the world are the ones that get just pushed off to the side for some new meme coin that has arrived that everyone needs to talk about. So there are those aspects. Like that's my main point with that is like for the people who are listening, who are looking for that like next level of, well, I'm trying to get involved in the industry, not just talk about whatever meme coin there is. There is that level. You just have to find those people, and like that's how I always operated when I was making videos back in the day. It was like, how can I make a video that the CEO or the COO or the CMO or someone on the team of a company I'm trying to get the attention of will see the video? Like, what kind of content and stuff can I put out there that would get them to see my stuff rather than me, I don't know, like conning my way into this group of people that I'm trying to learn about and get involved with, because it's so fascinating. The Web3 world is quite literally the land of innovation. Even if it's something that's not specifically in Web3, the people in Web3 like to talk about all the things happening in the innovation sphere. So the Tesla conversation gets roped in, the people who are interested in Tesla, and then they find someone else. So there's a whole lot of things happening.
But I think also the thing that's cool about this, like a lot of the Web3 innovations are making their way to like the real world scale, right? Like the NFTs is a good example. Like NFTs started off as like being like silly pictures that you could just pass on and sell and buy. And now this is becoming like the tokenization of the world, right? It's becoming the airline tickets. It's becoming like Lofty is doing real estate that's tokenized online. And so what started off as maybe like a silly kind of Web3 degen kind of like feature has merged to become something much, much, much bigger and much, much more impactful from a real world scale perspective, which makes it super interesting. Definitely.
All right, so I'm curious on what a day in your life looks like. Like you wake up, it's a Wednesday, just a normal weekday. What is there any kind of semblance of a routine, or is it completely different each day?
There's a bit of a routine. Like I mean, we are like at the foundation, we all work remote, like with like this. We're basically spread all over the world. Unfortunately, all over the world is not the West Coast of the US. And so there's only very few of us that are on the West Coast of the US. Most people are either East Coast based or they're in Europe, which means that my day is starting pretty soon. So my first meeting typically happens at like 6 a.m. Pacific time.
I was on the West Coast all the way up until like 2 weeks ago, so I feel your pain. If I slept in at all, I missed half the workday.
Right. So my first meeting typically is at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I have my routine where I need only half an hour to get ready. So my alarm goes off at 5:30, and I need to make sure my coffee is set, my dog is fed, and everything. And by 6 a.m., I'm ready for the first meeting. And so, but the good news is that those meetings tend to kind of taper off and be done by, I don't know, noon, 1 p.m. or so, which means I have the afternoon to actually do some work and to read up on things and write documents and think and do all kinds of different things. So it's not a bad schedule actually. And then I try to walk my dog before dinner. And that's my time when I listen to crypto podcasts and get up to speed with that. And if I'm tired of the crypto stuff, then I listen to a history podcast. The Empire. Have you heard of Empire podcast? Like this history podcast, fantastic podcast. Anyways, that's kind of my podcast hour. Mostly crypto, but sometimes I have to kind of go to something else and then listen to a history podcast. So that's kind of my day.
Okay, well that's super fascinating. And in regards to the crypto podcast you're watching, are you mainly watching like conversations, like well, I guess who are some of your go-tos if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. I mean, the crypto podcasts I listen most to are like, I mean, the bigger ones everybody knows, like Unchained.
Got it.
Bankless. Bankless is a pretty good one, although I don't necessarily agree with their take on like layer ones versus layer twos and stuff. But that's a whole other conversation. But it's a quite insightful podcast as well. I enjoy that one too.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Yeah, I produced a podcast with Erica Kang, who is she puts together a lot of the events that were in Asia, and she interviewed. Am I really gonna blank on her name? Pierce, Hester Pierce from the SEC. And she's a big time player. They call her like crypto's mom or something like that. Like she's out there on the front lines trying to help us out as much as she can. And oh wow, I can't remember where I was going with that. It took so much mental energy to remember her name, but I forgot the whole point that I was bringing that up. I remember now. She asked, she was like, what do you do? Like, how do you keep up with what's going on in crypto? And Hester Pierce from the SEC goes, I listen to like the crypto YouTubers and X people. And like, I'm actually watching some of these podcasts. So for people who are out there like us, who are out there putting out the content, there are people watching who are in the industry. So definitely keep going with that. You never know what can happen.
Oh yeah.
By the way, I bet, I don't know if you have, but like, I've always said content's the best way to get your name out there and to get into rooms that maybe you would not have expected for yourself to be in, or having conversations and stuff. Has there ever been content that you're watching that ends up leading to something, you end up connecting with them later on, or you're like, that was a cool idea, like let me follow them and revisit this conversation later? Like I just have always believed that can happen. Like there's no other way you find people, at least in my head, when you're in Web3, it's just things you put out there. And if you're not putting out anything, no one would know to like connect with you. No one would know to like talk to you about an idea you had,
Yeah, I mean, there's like so many conversations that I think are super interesting, right? Like there's lots of conversations around AI and AI agents right now, and how they integrate with blockchains, which I think is a super fascinating area. So yeah, I think these, all podcasts that like I learn something new from every podcast I listen to, and so I love these podcasts, and I know there's a huge amount of work that goes into them, and what you do, what everybody else is doing, huge amount of work that goes into this, and so a lot of respect for what you guys are doing in that regard, and because I think it's crucial. I think those conversations tend to be very insightful. They tend to be kind of leading edge as to where technology is going, and so I think for anybody kind of in the blockchain industry, you kind of have to be on top of things, because things are moving so fast that if you kind of tune out for like a month or so, you're just going to be, Goatsy didn't exist a month ago, and it's like now $800 million worth of market cap. So so you have to be on top of things, and so these podcasts are just a great way to stay
and get a read on kind of how everyone's feeling in the markets, just to get a bit of a read on that. I'm curious if you've always been like this, curious and out there to learn, kind of like heads down, grind, get things done. Have you always been like this since like the student era, back when you were a student in school doing things like that? Like, have you always been this kind of mentality, or has this kind of changed over the years?
I think I don't know if I go back. I mean, it's a long time ago, like student and high school student, but I've always been more of a geek. I always loved tinkering. I was a math geek. I remember like when I was 16, I won a contest with a couple of friends. Actually, my first time into the OS was the result of a contest that I won, because me and a couple of friends, we built like the biggest magic square. You know what magic squares are? Do you remember magic squares?
I think something's coming to my head. I think so.
Yeah, it's where it's a square. Basically, if you add up all the numbers in a row, each row or each column, they'll all sum to the same number.
Oh, okay, right? Okay, got it.
So I don't think that's what I was thinking, like, with a few friends, we built like one of the largest magic squares in the world, and it was in Belgium. I grew up in Belgium, and so that was a big deal. And we got like newspaper attention, and then and then with our friends, we won a competition, and we basically got to go to the US for the first time. And that was when I was 15. And so I was always been kind of this math geek and like tinkerer. I loved tinkering. I had my little kind of electronics lab in the basement. And, at that point, none of the stuff was low voltage. I remember like playing with lights, but LED lights didn't really exist. And so it was more like, regular light bulbs. And then of course you get shocked, and then I got shocked a number of times. Anyways, so yeah, I've always been more of a kind of a geek, a math geek and a tinkerer, and I think I still am.
Have you had a latest venture, a creative endeavor, or has it been heads down bull market type of move for the last couple of years? Or
yeah, actually, when I was like during COVID, I bought like a very old Airstream motorhome, a classic motorhome that is like 40 years old, and then decided to remodel it. And of course, I'm not very good mechanically, like building seats and building and like wood paneling, and that's not my thing. I don't know how to do that. That would be, if I were to do that, it'd be awful. It would look awfully. So I had more of a specialized company do that, but I took care of all the electronics, and so I made it completely like remote controllable, home assistant driven. Every button is electronically controlled. There's like 100 sensors in it that track everything from temperature to tire pressure to like whatever. So that was my kind of little tinkering that I did.
Love it.
I still do.
I'm curious too. I can't tell if you're like, some people are like, I don't know what the words are, like introvert extroverts or extroverted introverts. I'm not exactly sure what the terms are today, but do you ever go to the conferences? Do you have a lot of fun at them? Do you have certain types of conferences or types of events that you go to that you really enjoy?
So I like events. I don't think I'm the best networker though. Like that is something that doesn't come naturally. No, I know it comes to some people very naturally. They'll walk up to anyone and like spin up a conversation and and I'm not very good at that. I'm not a great networker. So which is not great if you're going to a conference, because that's all about networking. So anyways, but I love some conferences and I love the content of the conferences and I love the speakers. The networking, I have to do more of an effort there.
I hear you. I appreciate the honesty there. To be honest, I'm gotten better at it, I think, over the years, but it's still pretty difficult. Like depending on the day or the time of the party or the thing I'm at, like I may be feeling talkative and I may be able to figure out something to walk up to somebody. Otherwise, sometimes I'm like, nah, not today. I'm tired. So I feel you there. Curious on just like your overall thoughts. So obviously you're in lots of conversations and you've got your eye a little bit on the industry. Curious on what you'd like to see more of or less of in the Web3 world.
I think the big challenge from a Web3 perspective to me is how do you onboard kind of the next generation of users and developers. There's, the numbers vary, but I think the consensus is that there's around 30,000 active kind of blockchain developers, and there's about 30 million active Web3 users. That is not a huge number, and so that number needs to grow and needs to grow aggressively. And I think that to me is the biggest challenge that we as an industry have, is how do you basically grow that number significantly. And I think from the developer perspective, the way we are trying to tackle this is, on the one hand, is by making it as easy as possible for people to come over and develop. You kind of meet the developers where they are and you give them the tools that they're used to. But I think there needs to be, there's also an important educational component to that, because a lot of the Python developers or TypeScript developers you talk to, they're going to say like, okay, I understand it's easy to do, but like, why would I do it? Like, what use case does it solve? And I think within the kind of the non-crypto native and the non-blockchain world, there's still a lot of questions about what can the blockchain do, right? And so people don't really know this in to the extent that they should, right, to be able to actually do this. And so there's a big educational effort that all of us that we have to do to basically educate people about the value and the use cases that the blockchain enables, and then make it as easy as possible for those developers to come on board and start developing. So I think that's on the developer side. And then on the user side, how do you get the next generation of users? I think that really has to do with UI. And I think it is still very hard for a regular user that has no technical background to become a degen and set up a wallet and write down all the seed phrases and then it's crazy how difficult it is, right? My phone just broke and I had to kind of swap out my phone, and now what happened to all of my accounts? Oh, well, I have to, where did I write down these seed phrases? Right? Yep. So it's difficult. It's difficult. And so I don't think we'll get to the next generation of 100 million, 200 million active Web3 users until we fix those kind of basic kind of UI problems. And again, we're as Algorand, we're trying to do this. We're part of the DREC Alliance, which has as a goal to make key recovery a lot easier, and use social mechanisms to allow people to kind of reconstitute their keys without having to write down 24 words and stuff like that. So we're trying to go in that direction. Liquid auth as a technology to kind of bridge with Web 2 should also help there. But I think there's a big effort there. And I think ultimately, the biggest kind of best, most successful blockchain to me in the end is going to be the blockchain that nobody notices, that just disappears, where all of the complexity is just abstracted away. And like, again, I gave you the example of Hesapay. Like, if you ask like a family in Afghanistan who's basically buying bread and using crypto, do they know what blockchain is? They have no idea. Right? They have no idea. They don't have a traditional wallet with like seed phrases and any of that stuff. They have absolutely no idea. The only thing that they get is like a plastic card with a QR code, and that's linked to their wallet that is managed by Hesapay, and then they pay, and they never have to deal with any of the complexity of a blockchain. And that's how they get hundreds of thousands of users. Like, you could not get 100,000 Afghans to participate in this if everybody has to write down a 24-word seed phrase. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, TravelX is another example, right? Like, the people that are buying and selling airline tickets, they don't know they're doing this on blockchain. It's like completely hidden from them. And so that to me is an element of like getting to mass adoption, is we need these developers to craft experiences that really don't show the complexity of a blockchain, just completely abstract the complexities of blockchains away, so that the users can focus on the things that they want to achieve and the goals they want to achieve, as opposed to having to deal with all the underlying complexity.
Yeah. How important do you think the crypto industry and the degens and the spaces and like all those kind of things, like how tied together is that versus like the professional business side of like Algorand or another crypto? Like, something that comes to mind when you say that is like, the winner, like I've heard that too as well. Like, the way we win is by nobody realizing we're just behind there doing the thing and they're using our software or whatever. So like, how much of an impact is there from the broader crypto world if you're mainly pitching to like X company, like Boeing or whoever the company is, you're pitching to them, and they're like, okay, cool, like, you solve this problem, it's better for our customers to use this makes more sense for us, it's more secure, hopefully instant finality, like all those things. And they're like, okay, cool, makes sense, you guys solved our problem, great, like, we don't care about the numbers. And like how attached are those two? Are they separate? Are they together within the same industry but not exactly like overlapping? I guess I'm not exactly sure. I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think both are critically important. I'm not saying that Algorand is kind of the enterprise blockchain. I didn't say that. Like, for instance, TravelX, that's not an enterprise solution. It's a consumer buying and selling airline tickets, right? So that's very consumer. That's very consumer focused. Or Lofty for real estate, right? Anybody can buy, like, if for $50 worth of a real estate property, right? That's very Web3 and very kind of consumer oriented. So we as a blockchain, obviously as Algorand, we let 1,000 flowers bloom, and we're equally excited about the DeFi type of applications as we are about enterprise applications. So both, I think, are really, really important. And I think you can't say it's like one or the other. I think both of them are really, really important. And as I said, like, a lot of the innovations that are coming on the DeFi side, on like the native degen side, will eventually also migrate and make their way to the other side as well. Like I mentioned the example of the NFTs, and like NFTs now with real world utility. That's an example of that. But I think that both of these elements are critically important and will continue to drive a lot of innovation in the broader blockchain space.
Very nice. I was going to say also, we've got a few minutes left. I have a question that kind of just popped in my head while we were kind of speaking about the industry as well. So you mentioned earlier in the podcast the way you got involved working in the crypto Web3 world. But was that your first introduction to crypto? It was kind of like out of the blue, left field, like 22 minutes late into the question. Like, I probably could have asked that 22 minutes and it'd been way more contextually relevant. But I am curious on what that first initial thing was. It a Bitcoin shill? What was it?
So no, my first like really introduction to, as I mentioned, the first introduction to basically blockchain was me going to this blockchain week in
Okay,
San
right, got
Francisco.
it.
And that was like, it was very interesting because it was a 2 day, I think it was 2 day conference, and I remember the rooms were packed. It was massive. It was massive, and so it's very exciting to see, and like a lot of like academic speakers that were talking about sharding and like how do you scale Ethereum beyond like
Um,
one transaction per second or something like that. So that was kind of the time that we were talking about, and so I still remember I was just fascinated by it. But I probably didn't understand like 5% of what they were talking about.
yeah.
But yeah, and especially like I remember also Vitalik speaking at the conference, and so even then, still now, but even then he was considered to be the god, right? I mean, people
Yeah,
walked
yeah.
in, and they were like everybody was standing up and screaming and yelling, and then he started talking, and I was like, I don't understand a word of what he's talking about. It was fascinating, and so, but then of course my curiosity was piqued, and I started digging in. And if I hear Vitalik talk now, I understand a little bit more. Maybe not everything, but I understand a little bit more than what I understood then. But that was my first real introduction to the world of blockchain. And I thought it was super interesting and fascinating. And so then that's when I got hooked. Even though I
Did you
didn't.
meet any cool friends from there? Did you make anyone any friends that you are still in contact with today from that very first event, or no?
Well, I'm not a networker. I told you so. So no.
Yeah, I remember my first ever event. Mine was an NFT degen type, and I just honestly met a lot of my other content creator friends at the time, and I was like, "This is cool. Like, we're all just took a chance on this industry, and it's working, and it's hot right now. I guess we'll just keep rolling with this and see what happens from here." Unfortunately, most of them are gone after that bear market, but a couple, 2 or 3 of them that I remember are still here.
But to me, it was interesting because like I was like the complete outsider, right? Like I mean, all like I was still working at Google. I was still working on Android, and so there was like no like connection point to any of them, right? Because they could have been speaking completely different language that I didn't understand. So it was it was fascinating. It was truly fascinating, but it would even be hard to establish a conversation because I talk about Android and they'll talk about sharding, and it's like
wow, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I've had the pleasure of hearing Vitalik speak a few times, and I kind of understand what he's saying. I'm right there with you. I think a few years ago, I maybe would have just gone right over my head. I mean, my first ever time hearing about Bitcoin or crypto was with some sketchy looking guy in college. We were in a public speaking class, and he gave a speech on Bitcoin, and it was 2017 or 2016. And I remember just thinking, this guy looks sketchy. He's talking about owning your own money. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I barely have money. Like, I don't need to worry about this problem. Like, that's where people buy drugs. That's all I remember thinking in that conversation. And just like past me, never thought about it 3 years later.
And the sketchy guy probably moved to Solana, chilling some meme coins now.
he might be loaded too. Like I remember the time, I believe he mentioned that he's just been mining and he just keeps stacking it at the time when he said it. I feel like that's what he said. So there's a chance he's loaded. There's also a chance I run into him at some point if he's still in the industry. I can't remember his name. He looked a lot like my college roommate. Different guy. They both liked Bitcoin. They're both looking sketchy. So that was unfortunately my first couple experiences with crypto, but I still found my way here. So man, yeah. Anyways, that was actually pretty interesting. So I'm curious here. I've got a couple last questions, then some rapid fire Q&A before we wrap. But does Algorand have anything coming up that you're specifically looking forward to that you can shed any light on at all, or is there nothing that you can drop?
Yeah, so a few things, like 2 things I'm actually particularly excited about. One is that we are very close to launching staking rewards. And this is probably the biggest protocol upgrade that we've made in the 5 years that we've been around. And so for the first time, we're actually going to incentivize node runners to help secure the network. And of course, that's part of a really big push to kind of increase decentralization. We have some other initiatives along the same line around peer-to-peer networking. But staking rewards definitely is our biggest launch that's coming up before the end of the year, and so we're super excited about that. I think it's a very unique offering.
Wow.
It's very unique compared to staking on other chains. There's no slashing because, as you probably know, like the way pure proof of stake works is you basically ensure security through cryptography. We don't need, slashing at all to be able to secure the network. So there's no slashing, there's no lockups. And so I think it's going to be a very unique offering that we're super, super excited about. So that's one big thing that's coming up. And the second thing is, I kind of hinted at as well, as a marketer, like we have all this, like it's in a way it frustrates me, like we have all these great projects, these real use cases that operate today at real world scale. Not enough people know about them. We need to tell the world about these things. And so we're going to launch a bigger brand campaign around Algorand to basically show people, like, here are the things that a blockchain can do. And can a blockchain do that? Really, it can. And so we're gonna launch a big campaign that's gonna come very soon, actually, in the next, should I say this, in the next couple of weeks. And so we're super excited about that as well. So those are the two big things that that are coming up that I'm very excited about.
That's big time. So that's some huge. I wish I had like a soundboard or something. I would have probably hit some like mic drops, some alarm sounds or something, and applause. Okay, that's fascinating.
We're out of time
now. Okay, very cool. The staking thing, was that from other people saying, hey, this is what we want this, or is this more an internal discussion? Like, hey, I think this might be the next step for us.
I think we have, as a network, we have huge benefits from the staking perspective. Not only, as I said, the no slashing and the no lockup, but the other thing that's inherently unique about Algorand is that the cost of like running a node is very low. Right? It's like you can run a node on a Mac Mini, right? You cannot, like on Solana, you cannot buy a Mac that is big enough. Even the Macs that cost you $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, those Macs are not suitable to run a node on Solana. On Algorand, you can use a Mac Mini to run a node, and so it's super easy to run a node. And so we have all of the components to make this a really compelling offer. But of course, it's only fair if you ask people to kind of help secure the network, that there's an incentive associated with that. And so that's what we're doing. We're putting the incentive in place to get people to kind of stand up new nodes and run nodes. You can run a solo node. You'll be able to do liquid staking. You're going to be able to participate in pools. So we have a whole range of like staking options that will be available to users. And so I think it's really going to be a very attractive proposal.
Wow. For anyone who's listening, we're going to probably clip that as a soundbite later on. So you'll probably see it again. But wow, that is some big alpha coming from Algorand. So definitely, if you guys are looking to learn more about that, it should be tagged. If you're watching on X, at least, in the title, you should be able to click on Marc's account and Algorand Foundation's account. I would highly recommend you follow both so you don't miss any updates. And if you're enjoying the stream so far, repost it, retweet it, quote tweets, all the things help let people know. Or even someone else clip that a little bit out and make a tweet or something. We'd love to see it. Got a couple last rapid fire Q&A. One of them, it could be rapid fire. I guess it depends how you take it. But are there any professional milestones you're looking to hit, just like on a personal level, things you've noticed in yourself that you've grown and got better at, things you wanted to get better at in this role and have been able to, have the opportunity to grow?
I don't think there's any particular milestones. I don't really kind of think that way. I mean, to me, like what I'm interested in mostly is can I, as a CMO, do I add value to the foundation, to the community as a whole, and can we get better? Can we kind of like improve as we go? And to me, like as long as I feel like I'm adding value and the community sees the progress and we're moving in the right direction, I'm super, super happy. And so, and in addition to that, of course, the crypto space, as I said, I'm natively like a very curious person. And so because this space kind of moves so fast, it's just fascinating to be able to kind of the intellectual curiosity of being able to kind of follow what's happening and see the new technologies. Yeah. And so that is an inherent motivator for me, in addition to the fact that, hey, as long as I can add value, I think I'll be very, very happy. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. We'll do a couple last fun questions here. So what is the name of your PFP NFT? Is it an NFT project or is that just an art piece? And then, or I guess that was like the first question I had originally, but now it's what was your favorite NFT you hold and also your first NFT, if you remember.
Oh gosh. I don't, like, honestly, I don't know. I think I remember before I joined the foundation, it was not NFT, but I got NFDs, and so I got my markvl.algo NFD,
Hey.
and then I got the NFT associated with it. But then, more interestingly, I was talking about my Airstream. So my Airstream has its own NFT, and it's called Beastie. So my name is called Beastie because it's it's 34 feet Airstream, so it's kind of big, and so. But then if you compare it to like to massive trucks, it's not that big. So we call it Beastie. So I have beastie.algo. And so beastie.algo is actually the NFT that I own that I love the most. And it even has its own website. So if you go to beastie.algo.xyz, you can actually see the Airstream and you can see the renovations I've done. I kind of open source the code. I open source the code that I wrote to do all the electronics. And so, yeah. So
love it. That's awesome. That is a way different answer than I thought. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Do you have any favorite guilty pleasure TV shows or movies that you end up really liking?
I mean, for now, The Bear. I love The Bear.
The Bear?
Yeah, that's my favorite TV show right now.
Okay. What's it about?
It's about this chef in a Chicago restaurant.
Okay.
Have you never heard of it?
The Bear?
It's so good. It's so good.
The Bear TV show, comedy drama series. I see it. The Chefs. Interesting. I have not seen this one. Yeah, I recognize this guy's face though.
Awesome. It's just awesome.
You like it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Good. Where's it streaming on? Do you know?
It's
Hulu or Netflix maybe.
It's Hulu. I think it's on Hulu.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. So I'll have to take a peek at that. Very nice. Okay. Final question here. What do we got? I wrote down a few that might be interesting. Okay. I guess do you have any like silly I feel like no one ever has an answer to this one. I'll also ask it. Nobody ever has an answer, and I don't even know if I have an answer. But do you have any like reoccurring dreams, or things that keep popping in your head, things like that?
Gosh, I don't actually know my dreams. Like I don't.
That's what I'm hearing from the most. I mean, every now and then someone will say, "Oh, I have a dream that I fall out of the sky. Like I keep having this dream. I don't know why." I'm just always curious. I've never really had. I have a couple of reoccurring dreams, but they don't happen very often anymore. Maybe once every few years.
I don't really. Yeah, I don't know if I guess everybody dreams, but like I don't remember my dreams, honestly.
Just Algorand hitting all-time highs, just casual all-time highs is what we're dreaming here. Love it. I was gonna say, Mark, this is a great conversation, and I really appreciate your time. Was there anyone you wanted to shout out or any call to actions or anything you wanted to leave the audience with?
Well, call to action is stay tuned because staking rewards are coming up. Yep. And if you want to know the details, they're going to be announced very soon by John, our CTO. He's going to speak at the Staking Rewards conference, which is happening just before DEF CON next week. And look out for that because he's going to be announcing all of the details. And so get ready, get your Mac Mini ready, and start earning those rewards very, very soon. So.
Love it. Right on. Well, everyone, I hope you're looking forward to that. I will be at DEF CON, or I'll be at Redacted, which is, I think, the same dates as DEF CON. I'll be in Bangkok. So hopefully we'll see some of you all there. Definitely give Marc a follow, give the Algorand Foundation a follow some of those people. Don't miss any of those things that are coming up. Definitely, if you're trying to get involved in the staking, highly recommend that you check it out. And if you haven't already, repost the stream if you enjoyed it. Tag your friends, and we have spaces and streams here all the time at Wolf Web 3. So definitely give us a follow if that's something that sounds good to you. And we'll see you all later, everybody. Take care. And we are